Welcome to Lunch Zone. I am the current host of Lunch Zone, Morgan Forbush. I am a master's student in cultural anthropology, and I have some lovely folks here with me. And whoever wants to start.
I am David Kutchik. Oh, sorry. I'm
Nope.
David Kutchik, and I'm a PhD student here at UW Milwaukee in the English department.
I'm Janelle Malagong. I'm a second year PhD here in the English department.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Thomas. You're above in the list.
I'm Thomas Malaby, a professor of anthropology here at UWM.
I'm Matthew Carricker. I'm a PhD student at UWM.
I'm Air. PhD. Yeah, candidate at UW Milwaukee. There we go.
Oh, wow. I am Ren. I'm a master's student at UWM, and I'm eating lunch on Lunch Zone, which is kind of a revolutionary thing in the year of our existence, 2021.
Do you have
Our
a
Lord and
donut?
Savior.
I do not, but I do have some old holiday cookies from Beans and Barley because they're selling them on sale now, and they're still really good.
That is good to know.
Morning can opening. There we go. Opening.
That was so quiet. The
What are
can
you
opening.
cracking open there?
I'm opening a Mountain Dew. Usually my old mic would pick it up like with pristine clarity and be really loud, so that's why I do it in the morning. Just a Mountain Dew. Can do date.
I've never had a Mountain Dew before. But anyway, that's
They
beyond the
taste
point.
very different in Europe. I had Mountain Dew in Germany, and they actually have like orange juice in them.
Really?
Yeah, because
That sounds
they
amazing.
can't have high fructose corn syrup in Europe. So they're
Oh man,
different.
that sounds so much better than Mountain Dew because Mountain Dew
It's
is
not.
really just flavored. Oh,
In my opinion, because I'm so used to it. Anyway, let's let's escape the Mountain Dew's discussion. And talk
Morgan, I would just turn everything up just a little bit.
a little bit.
It's
Okay,
a little quiet.
I will attempt to turn everything up just a little bit. How's that? Is that better?
Yep, better.
Cool.
A little better.
Alrighty. I don't want to get, because people are going into yellows, and I don't want to get into reds, because reds are bad.
yes.
That's all I know. Alright, so this is my first time playing Wind Waker. We had a little bit of a flame war going on before the stream, so maybe we can get back into that. But I'm emulating it, and we're gonna play some.
Hey man, if you can't deal with the heat, get out of the kitchen. Lunch Zone.
Ew.
So, I guess maybe a good starting point for this stream is the fact that I've never played on GameCube controllers.
Oh, interesting.
I've never wanted to play on a GameCube controller because I grew up, I played on PlayStation 1 for a little bit, but most of my formative years was spent on an Xbox original. So when someone goes, what's the best controller in the world? I go, Xbox. Any of the Xbox controllers. And that's what I'm playing on today. I'm playing on an Xbox
Really?
One controller.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that's how I grew up, man. I don't like PlayStation controllers.
Can we talk about mapping buttons then?
Yes.
Because this is something that I'm going to talk a little bit about in my stream tomorrow. How did you decide like how to map all the buttons, right? Because the controls and the position of things is much different on the GameCube as compared to the Xbox.
Yeah, so what I did, the Z button is my right button, because that was the only one that I could think that was a good one, because there's only 4 face buttons. And then, but the GameCube has 5 face buttons, because of reasons.
Good
So, yeah.
reasons.
Reasons. I mean, the Xbox original controller had 2 random white and black buttons down below the face buttons that turned into the top buttons, but that's fine. But yeah, so Z is the button, the right trigger button, and then X and Y's are the same, and then I swapped the B and A because I'm so used to playing on the Switch. So, because I've been playing Breath of the Wild a lot.
Yep.
So I
that's always
switched the
hard.
A and the B, and like that's my authentic Nintendo experience, is switching the A and the B.
Well, it's hard, right? And I had to do the same thing when I was streaming the Banjo-Kazooie
God.
stuff, because the B and the A, just like how things are
Ignore
And I think what's really interesting and is really hard for my brain to take in is when you see the HUD, on the screen, and it's different from the controller that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes really hard to like get used to the the difference between the two.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a different. I don't know how other people feel. Like I feel like it's a different feeling entirely because Xbox One controllers are beefy. They're very heavy.
So chunky.
They're so chunky. They're
I
so
hate
hefty.
that so much.
I love it.
about-
I love that just feeling of weight in my hands.
So, I mean, this is the okay. So there are good and bad controllers. But a lot of the times, good and bad controllers are simply down to how is the programming team utilizing the controller and how is the user utilizing the controller. I love the original Xbox controller when I'm playing Halo. It's great for Halo. It feels awesome with Halo. Even the weight of the weapon, it works really well with how hefty those controllers
Oh, I want a
were.
table.
I would never use an Xbox controller for Smash.
Yeah.
GameCube is the obvious superior touch for that, and that's the thing that a GameCube controller has that no other that modern controllers have really moved away from is priority, right? The size of the buttons and the positions of the buttons, based on where your hand is going to rest on the controller, determine a certain priority. What are you going to use them for? Which ones are you going to press first? If you don't know how to play the game, what are you going to fiddle with first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What feels natural in your hand. The C-Stick is this beautiful mix of something that feels low priority, but you can smack it in just a moment and it can change something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is just when it's executed perfectly, it's beautiful. When it's not used right, it's a dongle and it feels weird and you don't know why it's there. And this is a thing with Nintendo controllers. They've been doing this sort of thing for a long time until things have gotten a little bit more homogenous in recent years. But even then, they still make weird ass controllers. The N64 controller is a horrible controller design. It makes sense that you would do that first for the first kind of bout into 3D games. But can you imagine if we kept going with the N64 controller? Oh, oof. It's all controllers have so much to do with game feel, and game feel has so much to do with controllers. So I know there's no objectively best or worst controller. I'm just saying that the GameCube controller works when the programmers are like, this is how we use these kind of physical communications that come through the controller itself.
I will just note we've discussed this many times on different Serious Play streams. I am a huge controller snob. And the GameCube controller is one of the best ever. I will not get into it now because it is.
What
I
is interesting, I'm trying to think of other controllers that have two control sticks that have different input feels to them. I don't know if there are really all that many.
Well, from a cost perspective, it makes sense. Why have two different parts when you can just have a standard one part? But yes, I do agree that I don't think there's any other ones that have different different control sticks.
Well, there was Bop It.
Oh, that's true.
You're
Oh man, my mom
perfect.
had a Bop It that I used so much.
not wrong. That's the thing.
I love the grandma. The grandma's really cute.
She's very cute.
I want more grandmas in games.
Also, is this normal for Link to have sister? I didn't think that was one of the common tropes.
No. Usually Link is either an orphan or somehow not related to
Or
other
sleeping
people.
in a vat of goo.
Or just yeah,
Oh.
there was that
Oh,
whole
sorry.
thing. That did happen.
That's Breath of the Wild.
Oh, I
so-
thought okay, that's my bad. You said sleeping Link in a vat of goo, and my brain was like, okay, well that could be Breath of the Wild, or it could be the Windfish one.
Windfish. What's that one?
Oh, Link's Adventure.
Link's Awakening, I think it's
Awakening,
called.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Link's Adventure is the second one.
Link's sleeping
Oh,
is
I have
kind
to
of
go
a trope.
somewhere and I don't know where I need to go. Oh no. Oh no.
Well, it's your classic coming of age story trope beginning,
I guess I gotta
right?
find
Like
sister.
especially with anime, but with other coming of age stories popular in the US of random character who has no family, sets out on an adventure. Wind Waker is one of the few where Link actually has a family.
And then he
similar.
forgets about them in Phantom Hourglass.
Oh man, are we gonna have like? Oh, you're just gonna skip? Oh, well, you can't skip it. That's cool.
I have no idea.
I was gonna say you're gonna get like the best animation in all of Legend of Zelda in about 5 seconds here. I don't want to spoil it. It's just a good animation.
Oh, are you talking about the pig?
No. I'm talking about the Siddle. And if you stop it at any point in time, it just looks dumb, and I love it.
There's color discourse. Yes.
Ergonomics of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Oh, definitely.
Totally Jambalaya.
I definitely think, like I agree with Ren. What's Ren's saying? The best thing for me to play a first-person shooter on, or like Borderlands, or Gears of War, or Halo, or if I played Call of Duty, probably Call of Duty, it would be on a controller. There's no way that I could play like Resident Evil first-person shooter versions. You see her, I'll tell that she needs to lift a jar in front of it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think like one of the games that feels the worst when you're playing off controller is something like Castle Crashers or any side-scrolling brawler.
I played
that has
Castle
a thing.
Crashers on the 360, so I don't know.
Yeah, I played it on PC.
Oh boy.
As you can imagine, it just doesn't track to keyboard very well at all or intuitively. And I somehow beat the game, but you know, I made it substantially harder for myself. And like, you know, it is absolutely worth mentioning that like changing your controller is a way that fan games or players or speedrunners will like change their difficulty, right? Like there was a speed run of I don't know if it qualifies as a speed run per se. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But there was a playthrough of Dark Souls 1, I think, at one of the GDQ events on a DJ Hero controller.
Oh boy.
And like that's unintuitive. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yes. Oh boy.
So
I-
really, more weird controllers for serious play. Like you should be playing this on a Wiimote on right now.
So you're gonna hate me, but the only Super Smash Bros. That I actually played a lot of was Brawl, and I played it on a Wiimote.
I love Brawl.
I only played it on a Wiimote because I didn't like GameCube controllers. Ah! Oh no! Small child is running after me. Run away!
Oh yeah, and he's got that.
He's got
snot coming out
COVID.
of
Get
his-
away.
Yeah, so you gotta worry. He's infectious.
Oh,
I love Brawl, and people love to hate on Brawl. I think it's great.
the best.
I would say the fourth is the one that I like the least.
Is that the ultimate or?
No, it's like it was called like Super Smash Bros. For Wii U.
Oh, is that the
3DS.
one that was cross-compatible with like 3DS?
Yeah, well, it's not cross-compatible.
It just was
There are two
released
different
both
versions
ways.
of it. Yeah.
Is
This
my sister up
Pokemon.
here? I don't know where my sister is. Oh, I'm gonna fall.
Dude, Subspace is a great mode. Like I wish they
It is.
brought
It's
back
amazing.
Subspace. And but I will say the best thing to happen to Brawl was the fan mod Brawl Minus. I don't know if we want to like someday it would be amazing to arena crossover with Fan Game Follies.
I was
play
gonna say,
Brawl
if
Minus.
only we had an upcoming series all about fan games
Yes.
Plug it.
So
or fan mods, which we
You-
do
guys
tomorrow
are
at 4
probably-
p.m.
Are you laughing
probably
at my
familiar
comments?
with Project M, but for people who aren't
Yep.
familiar with Brawl Minus, if Project M makes Brawl more competitive, more melee-like, Brawl Minus makes it less competitive. That is its goal. Like, for instance, Link's arrows become explosive and fully automatic in Brawl Minus. It
Okay.
is just a whole meme, and it's fantastic.
Oh,
It's a
man.
great party game.
I'm getting a spyglass. Or telescope, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, Brawl. I mean, I think that the reason why Brawl gets a bad rap is because coming from two different angles, right? If you're coming from the the competitive angle, there's a better game for you, and I think if you're coming from the super casual angle, there's a better game for you, right? It's like it's not the best of either world, and though it gets lost in the middle. But I'll just note, I think it's a fine game on its own right. And when I was in college. I wrote this in the chat, but like it was the Smash game that had just come out. It's funny. I remember we played so much of it. My door was always open. People were always in my room playing Brawl, even when I wasn't playing. Like I'd be like doing homework, and people who don't even live in my room would be playing Brawl
Ah.
on my TV because we had a huge TV in ours. Yeah, neither fish nor fowl. That's
No.
but it was really funny to me because I remember about like after like near the end of our first year, we had played so much Brawl, and like somebody had like brought a Melee disc, and like I played Melee after playing Brawl for the whole year, and I was like, God, this game's so much better. It was like literally what I thought. Because I just liked how much faster I was. Like I just and tripping is annoying in
Yeah,
Brawl. It's a
tripping's
bad
terrible.
mechanic. But what's funny is then like I talked to one of my best friends, Alec, who I still play
How do
fighting
I
games with
escape?
pretty regularly. And he didn't like it. He's like, it was too fast for him. Sometimes we went back to playing Brawl.
Guys, I'm stuck in the telescope. I don't know how to get out.
So you gotta go over
B?
to
You
the
just have
right.
to. You have to look
Go
at
to the
thing.
right and look at the red mailbox down,
Oh boy, it's inverted.
right in front of your grandma's house. That
Right.
bird thing.
Hello, bird thing. Oh, it has to look at me. Okay. I did look at it, but it didn't do the animation. Okay.
Because you'll see why. You're supposed to look at it.
Well, look up in the sky. Okay. Oh. Oh, look at the bird. Oh, hey! I know her from Phantom Hourglass.
Yep, very similar.
I
Now, if we want to talk about the real, like the actually like almost nigh unplayable Zelda game is Phantom Hourglass.
I love
That game
Phantom
was very poorly made. It was very poorly made.
I will
though.
have you know, I played Phantom Hourglass all the way through like 3 times on my DS. I killed my DS battery so much playing Phantom Hourglass. I loved that game. When everyone's like, Phantom Hourglass is the worst, I'm like, it's the only one I've ever played through, except for Breath of the Wild now.
Yeah, and for me, like doing motion controls in that way is just very tedious.
Was there that many actual motion controls in it? Like there was, like most of it
Well,
was
like
just
you have to in order to pick
stylus.
things up, you have to circle them. That's what I mean. I shouldn't say motion
Oh.
controls, but I mean the stylus
I
controls.
really like the integration. Like, I got angry at a lot of... Okay. I have to go into the forest, but I'm too weak. For Phantom Hourglass, I actually really liked, speaking of controls, how integrated the DS-ness was integrated with the DS controls. Because I was always angry with, like, the, with controls for, like, the Pokemon games, because they didn't integrate the touch
yeah.
stylus enough. And I was like, oh, but you have this really cool thing. And when the 3DS came out, oh, kiss that touchscreen goodbye, because they just wanted to use it 3D.
Yeah.
So it's just like, totally... Do I have to go get a sword or something? Or can I just go into the forest? I'm just gonna go in the forest. Or attempt to. But yeah, I loved having the stylus be really integrated in a game's control and stuff. I knew it was kind of a gimmick, but I really like Phantom Hourglass for that reason. Suspension bridge repairs. Okay. Ah. Yeah. But yeah, I understand why people don't like Phantom Hourglass, but I enjoy it.
Yeah,
very
I
much
think
so.
it's just the least. Oops.
So I have a question for Matthew. What you just said about controllers. Do you feel like the pen and tablet is kind of getting you a little bit closer to the embodied interaction with the game materials of actual tabletop?
No, not. It doesn't really reproduce the fidelity of being at the table. But what it does do is it engenders its own practices where the gameplay becomes more attuned to space, because I can draw out the spatial things, and I've moved more towards a kind of drawing a more tactical game where you can have lots more things, moving parts in the air, and you can know the physics of them, right? And then you can start to strategize. And so it's moved away from maybe more of a abstract roleplay character-based game and more to a field of combat kind of game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering about, actually. You know, the idea that to have those affordances that are much more about, you know, the fine motor skills of what you can do with a pen on a tablet, you know, that tactile sort of engagement with the materials is a bit more like, you know, what people like me grew up with D&D, and I'm just sort of thinking about that connection a little more.
I would say there's a caveat though, with because it sort of brings about a more cinematic kind of storytelling, because I'm drawing it as it goes and moving things around. My fear is the consequences, it silences the players in a way, and they feel
Right.
like they don't need to verbally communicate to have that shared presence. And what's lost is the presence of chatter, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Which
Well,
is already-
absolutely.
It's already so scarce when you play online. At least that's my sort of
Right.
skeptical
You're
theory.
already up against it online. I don't want to turn this into a D&D conversation, but I think that's just really interesting stuff to
Variety
think
show.
about. What's that?
I said variety show. You can talk about
Variety
D&D.
Well, what you're saying reminds me of the fact that when I was playing, in the 70s and 80s, we had graph paper, little graph paper, and the DM would typically describe, where you were moving through, the dungeon you were going through, and one person would be mapping it. So that one person would have that pad right underneath them, and they were like, drawing carefully in it, listening, and then and everybody else would be talking, and then periodically they would share that, and everyone would look at it, and the DM would look at it and check, that kind of back and forth, that flexing between those different kinds of modes with different kinds of focus. I thought was, I miss it. I thought it was very cool back in the day.
Right, of course, but also with those autonomous map making, right? The map becomes a relic of the world, because what happens when the map doesn't bear up to the DM's reality?
Right.
He's got a choice to make about whether, oh well, your map is wrong, or is he going to bend it slightly and say the map is
Absolutely.
not
Because it
part
doesn't
of
really matter, or maybe it's more interesting, or and all those other things. Yeah.
Yeah. But that was my only import with controllers, because I got this pen recently, and using your hands already, it has led to a little bit of overload. You can get that when you're moving. You're trying out new things as a dungeon master, where you're trying to do too many things at once,
Mm-hmm.
and you lag as a person.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did Casey use a pen and tablet? Does she use one when she's Because I know she uses Photoshop.
No, I'm pretty positive she doesn't.
This guy kind of
Would have been interesting. I'm not sure how Photoshop DMing would mesh well with the drawing capabilities. I feel like there are better programs to use in that way. Who knows? I don't know if like, I'm not sure if somebody's really designed software that's like super intended to work with the pen, like stylish structure for DMing. It'd be interesting to see.
Oh, we're absolutely, we are years off from it, but not that many years. 2 years, 3 years. I think we're going to see some real significant improvements and all of that stuff.
Yes.
Because so much of it has been developed for network play, whereas a lot of people want to be able to use some of this stuff in their home games too, and those are not exactly the same task.
Yeah, the character creator thing's come a really long way in the last 5 years. Not to speak too much to it, but like I still use Foxit Phantom for like PDF editing with D&D, but I know there are better character creation apps that I could download now and keep track of stuff at the table if I wanted to use a phone or a tablet to track my character bits. But that's its own thing. I do like Foxit a lot. There's a plug for Foxit Phantom. Free software, best PDF editor I've ever used.
So Morgan, how
Yes.
how are you feeling about? Because I think this is a good example of like because of the island part of it, and I think it's kind of similar to the plateau in Breath of the Wild in that way. How are you feeling about how it is like teaching you the mechanics of the game? Do you feel like it's being intuitive?
Well, most of it's intuitive. I always have issues with with the combat, and they're like, you have to thrust, do the L targeting, and then you tilt it, and then press B, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're telling me. But overall, like when running through the island and you talk to someone, and like, hey, can you jump to that rock? And I'm like, well, how do I jump? And then I figured out how to jump.
Again, the emulation makes it a little more difficult, right? Because
Yeah.
the controller that you're using, right, doesn't have the same form of input as the even though it's both a control stick, right? What am I saying? The sensitivity is different, which makes it a little more difficult.
Yes. Yes, it definitely is. And you can definitely get that with how I'm trying to do the camera. The camera is very much like, oh, you press the button, I'm going to turn 145 degrees. And it's like, no, I just wanted you to tilt like maybe 5 degrees. You didn't have to go all the way that way. So there's that sensitivity for the camera, especially, that I've noticed.
By the way, are we gonna mention that like the opening of Wind Waker is the exact same as the opening of Kingdom Hearts?
But
Yeah,
I will have to say that
It's
there's
just
no...
game
little different.
design, right? It's
I
game
know.
design,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
You put
Yeah,
you put the player on an island. They can't leave. They gotta learn how to play the game before they could leave, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh God, there's like starting areas in World of Warcraft to do exactly the same thing. You know,
Oh, it's a parry attack.
it's an old trope.
Dude,
It's more than the island, though. I mean, it's both of these are quintessential fantasy stories, right? So like, it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense to have, oh, somebody you care about kidnapped,
Oh,
needing to
no.
fight people who are you're close to because there aren't a lot of people on the island to learn combat. I think the only difference here is you don't really meet your rival. It's not like it doesn't have that Pokemon component.
He doesn't live
Yeah.
next to you and gets the opposite Pokemon as you?
Link
No?
with Pokemon, let's go.
The
That's
whole
Pokemon's.
rival thing in Pokemon. I didn't really play any Pokemon until my sons wanted me to start playing it, and I got my own DS and I started playing. The whole rival thing is such a strong presence in those games, and I feel pretty much entirely absent for me from the rest of my gaming history. Are there other sort of famous franchises that use that mechanic in that way? It really stood out to me.
Well, actually, it's really funny. On Scholars Play last week, we were talking about Riku and Sora as rivals, and watching, just in the chat and listening to them talk. And it's funny. The rival system in Kingdom Hearts 2 is so much better implemented than, like, Riku is so much better written than Kairi that like it almost becomes queer right there. Because
Well-
like Sora like breaks down and gets on his knees when he sees Riku after a long period of time and cries. And with Kairi, it's like, oh, you're here. It's like, what?
Riku,
the heck?
it definitely
Well-
seems like kind of this weird one-sided in like what I've seen of Kingdom Hearts. Like Sora's like, Riku, you're the best. I gotta go find you, and Riku's like, yo, bro, I'm doing my own thing. Goodbye.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of games not narratively as rivals, but I mean, it's hard to separate the idea of a rival mechanically versus narratively. But I'm trying to think of other games where I think this is more likely to happen in RPGs. But in Skyward Sword, you have what's his face, the diamond guy who appears multiple times, kind of like your rival, and you do multiple battles with him. You battle him 3 times throughout the game in Skyward Sword, but it's not the same friendly rivalry as it is in Pokemon.
Yeah.
Riku, in Kingdom Hearts, you fight him multiple times. He becomes a full-blown villain, and then by defeating him, you like make him better.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that friendly rivalry has been as strong or as centralized as part of a franchise as it is in Pokemon.
Yeah.
But I might be missing stuff.
I don't think you are. I think the like, I can't think of another game where that exists, because like the other game that comes to mind with a incredibly strong rival setup is like Devil May Cry, and that like, if we're gonna plot these on a line, on a spectrum, and say, well, here's the rivals. Kingdom Hearts is like in the middle. It's your friend, and he comes back, and you guys are friends again, and there is a friendly rivalry in some of the later games, and blah blah blah. DMC is like on the other side from Pokemon, where like you are always trying to kill your rival. There is like, in fact, it is literally the goal of some of the games to kill your rival on repeat.
Oh no, run away from sick child. Oh,
I mean, I love Virgil, but like, jeez,
There's a pirate ship, guys. Why no one tell me about this pirate ship?
Yeah, lots of pirate ships. You're gonna be seeing a lot of ships.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Okay. I think I have to go up here. I have no idea.
Are there any other games that like have friendly rivalries as like the center of their? I mean, other than games that are like blatantly Pokemon likes. Like I know there was like an MMO.
Naruto.
Does that count as I guess they do have games.
I mean, there's like the kind of fighting game component, but I was also thinking of racing games. In particular, they do tend to have a rivalry element if they're going to have any kind of cohesive narrative that puts them together.
That's true. Something like F-Zero.
Yeah, like F-Zero, Need for Speed, especially the ones that have you participate in illicit behavior.
Sonic Riders. Played the
Sonic
shit out of that game.
Heroes.
Sonic Racing.
Really, all the Sonic games.
Yeah, Knuckles.
Yeah, I guess. Have we talked about the loader game? What is the loader game?
I can be our resident expert on the loader game.
What is the loader game?
So in
it's
the
Lord of
two
the Rings
Shadow of Mordor and its
Oh yeah.
sequel, there's like a rival system in those games
Yeah,
where
it's called the Nemesis system.
yeah, the Nemesis system, where like
Oh.
enemies who kill you or narrowly escape your wrath will come back later with like a new title and new abilities and stuff like that, and they'll recognize you and they'll taunt you or something like that.
From what I have experienced in Shadow of Mordor, is the first one. People you kill also come back, and I'm just like, I killed
Yeah.
you. You were
They're like
fully
the
dead,
Undying or whatever.
and then they just come back, and I'm like, bro. So.
Oh,
this-
I love Undertale. Sorry, bad joke about Undying and Undying.
Ha 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 ha. Ha.
Oh,
But I think
Sorry.
Doc
the-
Strange does mention something that I think is interesting, like rival, romance, parent-child, orphan, abandoned, sibling. I mean, a big part of this comes back to, I think, children's storytelling is really rich and like folklore in these archetypes, and a lot of games take their. I mean, like Wind Waker, Legend of Zelda literally is like a fantasy, like folklore-ish kind. Like, I'm thinking of something like a King Arthur kind of story to it.
yeah. Sword in the Stone.
So I
etc.
think, yeah, so like I think a lot of these archetypes are coming from children's narratives in particular, which makes sense because the marketing for these products have been children for so long.
Yeah.
Even the more, adult themed games or whatever still take those tropes and use them.
Mhm.
I do want to quickly just throw out there. By the way, I choke up on names all the time, and when I forget, like, I'm not sure how to pronounce the name, I'll usually not say it. I want to like just fully say credit Tamara on Scholar's Play with the whole Riku and Sora as rivals who are also romantic thing.
Mhm.
So just it's out there. Go watch Scholar's Play. Go watch them play Kingdom Hearts. It's great.
Can we, since it's 12:34,
Yes.
and we only have 25 minutes left, can we get into the flame war that we're about to have about this game?
No, I'm not interested. I said that at the top, actually in the chat. If you, it's not an interesting conversation in my
No, it's
opinion
not, I
to
know.
argue what is the better quality Zelda game. I don't know.
No, I
That's my personal opinion.
This little guy.
I do love the Snot Kid.
He's just attacking.
The Snot Kid is very cute.
He has
He's
no
not
idea.
attacking. He just wants your attention. He's like that little, he's the little brother, right? Who just wants to be noticed.
I just like imagining the design moment when somebody in charge of doing the Snot Kid, including animating the snot, is like showing it to another person in the office and like, hey, so what do you think? Is this working? I'm making it here. He's running around. How's it look? Does that look good?
I wonder if he's the anime equivalent of the main character who always has toast in their mouth as they're running to school. It's like very similar vibes to
Yeah,
me.
right.
It is interesting because I think Wind Waker was released relatively early in the GameCube.
It was like 2004, if I recall.
Yeah, and so like I'm thinking
That's
about
like
how
that's 3 years. That's pretty. That's like halfway because the Wii comes out in 2006, so
yeah.
kind of mid.
Because I'm thinking too, like Super Mario Sunshine also had more of a brightly colored and more like childlike aesthetic as well. I wonder if, and this Snot Kid made me start thinking about it, the role of Nintendo's flagship franchises as like establishing their consoles.
Oh, I got this down.
Because I feel like obviously this is very childlike. Even it's very, very, very different from Majora's Mask, which would have been just the recent one. So I wonder how that production practice of, every Nintendo console has a Mario and a Zelda game and a Pokemon game or whatever.
Did the GameCube have
how
a
that
Pokemon game? They had
affects
Pokemon
how these games are
Coliseum.
made.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this is kind of a piece of console history. Like, I hate when people are like, "Oh, the console wars," and it's like, okay, but you're not actually talking about like those are long and dead, guys. We don't need to. Not every competition between two business entities is not a console war. Jeez. But in this one case, it is actually apt to bring up the console wars. I think, in the sense that like I think it's been known for a long time that like if you put out a Mario game on a Nintendo console, that's what's pushing Nintendo consoles. You put out a Sonic game on a Sega console, you define the vibe of the console, if you will, the aesthetic qualities of the console by putting out that game. And so that practice I think is continued onward. As long as we're gonna, at least as long as there is first party exclusivity, that's going to continue to be the case.
Well, I think one of the things to think about is when the console wars were console warring. Like you had Nintendo hasn't, in my mind, hasn't been part of quote unquote the console wars in any of the 2000s or 2010s or whatever. The console wars, quote unquote, to me, was mostly between PlayStation and Xbox because Nintendo has always been off in its own little corner doing Nintendo stuff, and everyone loves it. Everyone's like, Nintendo, you do you, and just if they wanted to do, high class, cutting edge games, I'm putting my quotation marks, but you can't see them. They always went to like PlayStation or Xbox, and I think the GameCube is where kind of the Nintendo aesthetic kind of got like the more cartoony stuff really got concretized, and then the Wii further did that, and the Switch definitely went with it because of the limitations of the Switch, and the
I mean,
Wii
it's
also
been
had
cooking
limitations.
since the N64, though. Like
Yeah.
the cell shading came in with Wind Waker and all of that, and this game like is revolutionary insofar as its visuals are, taking the tradition of cell shading and really working with it.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not Jet Set Radio, but
Oh,
like
sad.
that's like that, saying okay, well this popularized it versus this was the first thing to like really bake into this aesthetic. Two different things. Suffice to say that yeah, I mean Nintendo has developed a niche for themselves, and they've been developing a niche since they stepped into the 3D world. I think a lot of what killed Sega is that they couldn't do that. They were never very good at it. They didn't really know what they wanted the Dreamcast to be, it seems.
Also, the Dreamcast was kind of a unfortunate comedy of errors,
Yeah.
where they released it at a time. Well, also Saturn. Sega has a whole history behind why their consoles declined, and then the Dreamcast was the final nail. But the Dreamcast, one of the problems with the Dreamcast was the PS1 coming out and the PS2 coming out. Kind of was like, well, why would I do Dreamcast when I can do this PlayStation that has all of these cool games? Because the Dreamcast was notoriously hard to program for. Hello, Beetle.
So something then that I think ties a little bit of what I said, what you guys are saying, right?
Uh-huh.
The console wars, however we want to think of it, whatever, during the 80s and 90s, I think is definitely different from the development in the 2000s, where
Yes.
I think especially Xbox and PlayStation were interested in getting as quote unquote high fidelity graphics, or however you want to think of that, right? More realistic, whatever. And I think the GameCube and especially the Wii is when we see Nintendo. And this is why I was thinking about Mario Sunshine and Legend of Zelda being right. They're defining the console by being these childlike games. Is I think we really see Nintendo here trying to develop the identity of being a console for children, or quote unquote children at heart, right?
Or
where
families,
and whereas PS2 and Xbox are now doing the more teenager adult market and trying to push the graphic capabilities. To make things more quote unquote lifelike.
That was originally the kind of the thing that Sega had, right? I'm referring just to the Netflix series, that goes through the consoles and everything. Very interesting. But the Sega Mega Drive, and particularly Sonic, was deliberately a capitalist ploy to market games to a different demographic, distinctly older than Mario, and in fact that generation that was maybe outgrowing Mario, they thought. And so you would have so one of the things I remember from that is you would have the 6-year-old be excited about Mario, but then what's their big brother interested in? Sonic, and that's sort of like setting the expectation that the whole consumer market's going to grow up into a different aesthetic, which is into a different console, which is a different aesthetic. You know.
Well, this leads me to think, and maybe this is off the deep end in terms of connections, but back around in the late '90s, I think it probably was, right? So Pixar had come along and kind of generated a whole new audience and a whole new sort of era of animation. And the easy way to talk about it was, oh well, it's because they do this technical computer graphics so well, but the storytelling was something in their storyboard process, which is a whole fascinating thing in itself, was part of the core of how they thought they were, what made their works special, right? And at the same time, Shrek was coming out, and I just thought Shrek was terrible in how it didn't take its own material or its audience seriously. And in gaming, that felt, World of Warcraft was absolutely the Shrek of MMOs, right? It was a product that wasn't looking to take its own content and its own material and the meaning that it generated for those who were fans of it seriously, right? Well, I think there's something very similar here in what happened with between the different consoles. Nintendo, sort of like Pixar, early on, it seemed to me when I was following this, had a conviction that relationships were at the core of what would make their games and any games meaningful and relevant. And you didn't see that, I would suggest, in Xbox and PlayStation. They were going for this kind of, it's you against the world kind of thing. So I think it's fascinating to think about a company that makes a move based upon a set of values rather than any kind of simple cost benefit or cynical analysis. But you tell me if I'm reaching too far in saying all that.
No, I don't think so. At least
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I
Finally figured out how to get in the forest.
Konami's not making consoles, but they are making games that are motivated by the exact opposite. Exactly zero values.
Oh, Konami. Well, no, they're making a lot of money off pachinko machines. You gotta give them that.
Well, yes, but that's all right. So, do we consider being profit driven a value? Is it a value of values? A value that privileges only value?
I think Konami kind of. Konami I don't know what Konami was doing. That's kind of what it's like counterintuitive. Well, we're just gonna drop all our IPs and fire all of our developers and just kind of bad guy, and just do our own thing and make pachinko machines because that's what is profitable, Sorry, I'm killing a goblin. Sweet, look me. All right, but yeah.
Eric's saying interesting things in the chat and should say something about it in the show.
All right. So I'm just we were talking about the console wars, and I just think that it's a little revisionist, as I described it, to like say that like the GameCube was kind of geared towards more like childish kind of fantasies or games and specifically because we were using like the flagship games of Mario Sunshine and this Zelda game as the examples. But I think that the GameCube just was marketed for like a wide audience. Like I think back, I can't pull up and show you guys commercials right now. I'm not streaming, but and I don't have them pulled up. But like a lot of the early marketing was clearly for an adult audience.
Yes.
And like the GameCube was meant, I think, as a console for everyone, not just like sure, this game has a childlike aesthetic I think that's like the aesthetic kind of going with the thing. Go ahead.
I don't think any of us are disagreeing, right? Like I think they were interpreted and they were labeled as being sort of those are games for kids, because that was the only way from this kind of much more, I always think of kind of Xbox, college age first person shooter type players, for them to frame Nintendo as not what they wanted or not what they did. That was the language they reached for. But that doesn't mean that's what Nintendo was trying to do. I think they were absolutely trying to reach as wide an audience as possible. It was just taken to be sort of more innocent or more childlike because they were being communitarian, to use that word, rather than individualist, in their approach to
I think that's fine. I think that the language was getting a little mixed up for me because I just think back to the GameCube era and it's like they paid a lot of money to Capcom to get Resident
Yes.
Evil exclusives.
Yeah, and I
Like they
feel-
Yeah,
right,
right.
and so like, but yes, to me, it's kind of seems more like because Nintendo lost and their big ticket items like the Zelda games are kind of childish. We remember the GameCube as being this console that
Mhm.
kind of had that kind of quality, that
Yeah.
communitarian thing. And I wonder how much that was the case at the time, or how much of it is just a consequence of it being like a not selling system, right? A failure in some sense. And we try to, rationalize that quote unquote failure,
Yeah.
through like suggesting that this is why it failed is for this
Yeah.
reason.
I
And I wonder
think
if it's more complicated than
I
that.
think it is. Oh,
Very good response.
I feel like I do agree that I think it's somewhat revisionist, and I think I might have been thinking more of the Wii, because that's when I was cognizant of quote unquote console wars, was when the Wii was out, and the Wii was, in my opinion, totally out, specs wise and games wise outclassed. So for like the GameCube, I feel like they attempted. Like I feel like they did attempt to make it a more wide audience for the GameCube, but also to say all of my friends had GameCubes and I had an Xbox original, which I feel like might be why we think of it as a kids console, because a lot of younger kids had it versus not a lot of people had Xbox originals, and a lot of kids also had PS2s, so that also might
The best console.
ruin my argument. But I grew up with an Xbox original and a PS2, but not a GameCube.
Yeah, and the things that I was thinking specifically in was how their flagship franchises inform how they're marketing these things. Because I mean, like Legend of Zelda and Mario, right? The development of those games is partially how the public imagination thinks of their consoles. So I'm not saying it's specifically what they did, but it's a pretty clear trend here that the fact that these games sold the best on the GameCube and then were reified as indicative of the GameCube, I think does inform how the Wii got developed and how it became as more of a like all generations console rather than this teenage audience that really distanced itself from the GameCube. And I probably wasn't clear enough on that.
I think
Yeah, and that's fair.
Eric found one of them, but so the ads are like insane. I didn't. So I didn't have my head in mags at this point, so I didn't know that these existed. There's one where it's just the GameCube on a page and it says size does matter. There's one where it's a woman playing to sell the Wavebird, which if you don't know is the wireless GameCube controller. It's a woman playing the GameCube from her bathtub, which is hilarious. And also, God, I would do that if I had a GameCube in a bathroom. And then the one that Eric sent, which is like, what the hell? Is that are they selling Smash Bros or Silent Hill?
Eternal Darkness.
But yeah, I didn't realize the ads were the ads almost seem at odds with the content on the GameCube.
And I feel like that might be. There were third-party games. Nintendo's always had a problem with third-party games, and I feel like their in-house games were different from their third-party games. And while they try to get third-party games on the console that were like Resident Evil 4 and stuff, I feel like it still falls to more of the Nintendo feel for most Nintendo consoles. Wow, that's a long link.
Yeah,
Eric,
that's a
holy
link.
crap. Go on Bitly, man.
You don't get to see the game, only the link.
Only the link.
It's so good. It's so good. One second. Let me try to get it to you guys. Okay, there we go. This one is amazing. I don't even know if it's
Oh
real.
my gosh, WarioWare?
No, it is real. It is a real
I
ad.
love it so much.
So like when you're this many of them, is it really cherry picking anymore?
Oh, I just meant
Or-
that like
well, I
I was
mean,
looking
like-
at the Google images and I was picking the ones that like were more adult oriented, right? There,
Yeah.
you know, there are some that are like, you know, like more less adult oriented, right? That I can see here, but I mean, I'm just not necessarily sharing every single one.
Oh,
Yeah,
small man.
and
Okay.
Doc Strange just makes a great point, right? That because we're seeing the U.S. marketing, right, that might be a really different campaign or groups, then. And I think it's also interesting too, making my point a little more invalid, but right, I'm thinking of games like Viva Pinata or children's games on the Xbox that also became really big too.
That was
I think
more
that was
for
the next generation.
that
I
360.
think that was 360.
The 360 and the Kinect, and you can kind of see for the Kinect especially the thrust to emulate what the Wii had going for it, which was like, oh, it's a game console that you can use for your kids. It failed miserably.
Yeah.
But the
But
360 and the Xbox original did have mascot. It was like the last of the mascot platformers. Like you had the Hobbit on the Xbox original, which was terrible, but I loved it. You had Blink, which was like a mascot sort of platformer.
I think these are great examples. Such a great conversation. It reminds me of that old lesson, right? The quote from, I think it was Malinowski, who said, "An oceanic gulf separates what people do from what they say they do," right? And a lot of our conversation is bouncing back and forth between how certain communities around gaming represent themselves and to others as being about this or being about that, how marketing represents certain games, certain consoles being about this, being about that. But the actual practice of the players is almost never in alignment with how they say they are, right? So these people who are maybe identifying themselves very self-consciously as being first-person shooter type gamers and the rise of Halo and all the rest, that never changes the fact that a really well-designed game that might seem like a kid's game could get really huge with them, right? Because it's fun, right? Like, so there's that weird thing that we have to do. We're talking about this tension, but the tension is often much more in the level of representation than in the actual practice.
Yeah. So I'm getting distracted by the hero shield.
Getting your
This
shield,
part is
yeah.
so cute. Aww.
By the way, if anyone wants to read a great book about marketing, our own Cal Applebaum in the anthropology department wrote a book called The Marketing Era, which is a kind of Foucauldian treatment of marketing based upon his work with international marketing companies. And it's kind of the main statement on how marketing comes to be the tail that wags the dog of capitalist corporations. It's really, really good.
That's like something I definitely. This is totally me centric, so I'll just say it and then leave the conversation there and not expand it. But like, whole mediums. Unfortunately, the medium I'm most interested in has just come out of marketing. Like it's just marketing, and I guess to some extent that happens with other mediums too, right? That like somebody comes up with an idea, like, oh, we could sell this, and then they go and make it. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I think what makes the PS4 or the PlayStation and the Nintendo different from the Xbox in that regard is like you not only have like the main company like contracting with other marketers to make ads for them, but you also have like Nintendo of America and then the US PlayStation group like in charge of the marketing for the Japanese game by hiring like US marketing firms. So it's like it's this really weird layer of all of these different groups coming together to determine what's going to market this specific game or the specific console best for which group.
Absolutely, and it's a whole field. There's actually several scholars. I mean, Krista Lee, in her own way, with her work on the Taiwanese educational software gaming company, dealt with some of this too. But there's actually some scholarship out there about game translation, which is really, really interesting stuff. And it's not just about doing country-specific translations for games, but also about the marketing around them. And not many people have done work in that area, but there are a few, and it's really fascinating.
Well, this may be only tangentially related, but it reminds me of how in Spain they just don't use the same movie titles. They they completely change all of the movie titles and they give them Spanish names. So I've got two examples here. Maybe you can guess. So the Spanish title is Jungle of Glass. Can you guess what controversial Christmas movie that might be referring to?
Can you say the name again?
Jungle of Glass.
Die Hard.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And the other one was, I can remember off the top of my head, was You Will Go to London, I Will Go to California.
Oh.
So this one was a remake. Has had a remake, but this one was the Parent Trap.
Huh.
Oh.
But I'm just Larry T. Sorry.
So
to
you-
It's
interrupt.
quite loud.
There's
Quite loud.
probably, ad infinite examples of this, but this is what you're talking about, right? The way in which you have a universal product, right? Like a game or a movie or whatever, and then the transliteration process into a receptive consumer culture.
She can't even see over the hand railings. Yeah, I totally agree though. Oh, okay.
All right, I'm gonna have to pop out for my office hours. Thanks, everybody. This is really fun.
Bye.
Bye, Thomas.
Yeah,
Great
bye,
time.
Lucy.
Thanks, everybody.
I do agree. Localization is really interesting. The Final Fantasy XIV, the localization department for the English translations is just a bunch of memers.
Yep.
The penultimate the penultimate quest for one of the expansions was where you go attack this place called the Castrum, and I kid you not, the quest was rocking the Castrum. And it's just,
Oh, I hate it.
it's just, the localization for that game is just ridiculous. All of the quest titles, all of the fake titles are just a bunch of references.
Yeah,
it's
Giant
great.
Enemy Crab is a Fate title, which is just amazing.
Yep.
Oh my god. And like I think localization also just it's something like in the Silent
another
Hill
can of
games
worms.
people don't think about. But like there are a couple really good interviews on YouTube of people talking to the localizer for Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 and like what went into like why are certain translations like why translate certain kanji certain ways and like does it what about the puzzles got messed up in translation and things like that. It really does like rewrite the game and complicate the authorship in interesting ways.
Definitely. I think we are right up at 1. It's 12:59. Any final remarks, comments, concerns?
And this is why David is right that this game sucks. We never even left the island.
That's my fault. I got very confused for a
No,
long time.
I love the intro. The intro's great. One of my favorite parts.
I didn't realize
The
you could cut down
grandma.
trees with swords. Didn't make sense to me. So now I know that I can cut down trees.
This is the best Legend of Zelda game. I will die on this hill.
I like this. So far I like it. But we'll see how I like it for longer because I did love Phantom Hourglass, so I've been recommended this game very much. Oh, I hit the B instead of the A. Leave that on that controller snafu. Have a great day, everyone. See you. There's nothing today left, but there's tomorrow. There's Fan Game Follies by David, so go watch that.
Yeet playing Majora's Mask Randomizer.
And go see the championship that Eric's running because it's amazing.
Yes.
Oh,
All of
yes,
it.
do that too.
Follow us on Twitter, all the socials, etc., etc. Thank you all for coming. Bye.